Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick. It's been months, and I am joined by my good friend and frequent guest on the show, Vubang. What's up, Vubang?
Thanks for letting me back on my yearly off-season catch-up. I don't know, frequent would probably be more than twice a year, but I'm glad after a 1-year hiatus to have a baby. I'm glad I'm back.
Yeah, well, you were frequent before, so it's all relative. Big time contributor, big time fan. Well, welcome back. It's been a minute since I actually had an episode, and especially since I had you on here, and a lot has changed for your Golden State Warriors, and I just kind of want to talk about some of the summertime. Didn't really hop on. There were a bunch of times over the summer where I was like, I'd like to talk about that, but I just didn't get around to recording, or I was busy or whatever. But first off, I mean, I guess, like, what are your thoughts on Klay leaving, and how do you feel he's gone?
Yeah, this is one of those things where I don't know if you felt this way too, but I felt like this was happening for years. Like this was the trajectory that we've been on for a while. And so in some ways, I didn't really feel anything when it happened. Like I knew it was going to happen years ago. It just felt like he was not going to change the way he was going to play to stay with the Warriors. Like he wanted to stay Klay, which is fine. Like as a player, he should play the way he wants to play. But if he wanted to stay a Warrior, it just required him to do something a little different. And it sounds like we were going to pay him the Warriors were going to pay him the same amount of money as the Mavs, but that was only through negotiation. So I can totally understand his pride to be able to go and get paid for what he deserves and play the way he wants to play, which sounds like, according to Mark Cuban, is to just stand around and get a bucket once in a while. I don't think Klay actually knows that, but it sounds like they want him to be Ray Allen, which is, I thought, what we wanted him to be, but we'll see what happens. So all that to say is we all knew it was going to happen. As a player, I think it's great for him to go, but as a team, it's probably good that we're not paying Klay the same amount of money as he has been expecting. And I don't think it's a huge drop off for Buddy Hield, who knows his role. Like we don't have to worry about him fitting in and knowing his role. So I'm actually kind of excited in some ways. And I also know that he's going to, just like if Chris Webber can retire a Warrior, if folks haven't seen the Chris Webber career stat line, just seeing him retire as a Warrior, which is like the craziest thing to even think about. I'm not sure if people realize that. And as someone who was at the last Warriors game where Chris Mullin played in basketball as a Warrior, like Klay will be back, whether it's just his last year or whether it's just a ceremonial last game, or if it's him coming to unveil his statue, he'll be back at some point.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all that. Ever since he got hurt with the ACL and then the Achilles and all that stuff, you're just like, we had so much empathy for the guy, and you just wanted to see him like be okay on the court. And for what it's worth, a guy I don't personally know, but just you want to see him be okay, like mentally, I suppose. And you just saw that there were flashes. It was like, oh, it's coming back, but he just needed to change the scenery. And the Warriors, with the new collective bargaining agreement and all these new second apron type things and the punishments and penalties for going above and beyond with payroll, it just wasn't realistic. And the idea that the Warriors disrespected Klay, that some people tossed about, I definitely didn't give this any credence, but like that they disrespected him by kind of kicking him down the curb a little bit while trying to get Paul George, it's et cetera, et cetera. I personally didn't really want this massive trade for Paul George, but like people wanted it, right? And they had to see if that would be in actuality before actually talking to Klay, and that's just how it goes, unfortunately, right? I mean, just is what it is. Maybe if the penalties and the CBA didn't change over the last couple of years, then you wouldn't have these kinds of issues. But it is what it is, and I've said for a long time, change of scenery for both parties is fantastic. And the dude was chasing ghosts for a long time, and he was never going to be okay with just being uh, coming off the bench, not getting his 15 shots, watching Pajemski play more than him, watch Moses Moody try to get some playing time in his place. So I love Klay. I think it'll be fun to see him with Luca, with Kyrie, with Mark Cuban as a personality and stuff like that. So it's cool. I'm glad it's a clean break and moving on and whatnot. I don't particularly think like I mean it's crazy, right? Because like we had the Warriors had Jordan Poole, and then he was replacing Klay, and then they got rid of Jordan Poole, and Klay had an opportunity, and he couldn't really take it, and it just it's best for all parties involved. I look forward to seeing him come back to Chase Center in a Mavericks uniform and see how that plays out.
I will say about his contract expectations. Like I think that he wanted to get paid based on past performance and what he felt he deserved for the franchise, because him and Steph eventually basically made a $450 million team into a $5 billion team. And it's hard, but it's hard to argue. And I think Draymond said this too. It's kind of hard to argue the amount of money that he got paid for 2 years for not playing, recognizing that, of course, he was working himself back to shape, but like to ignore 2 years of getting paid to not be on the court, and also expect sort of, the history of being on the Warriors is just a tough pill. I'm sure Lakeup did not want to swallow.
Yeah, and you could look at those 2 years as like the kind of thank you years, I suppose, and then now it's like brass tacks, right? It's kind of bottom line if you're trying to persist and continue. And the fact of the matter is, a franchise that's still trying to compete in theory can't be given legacy thank you contracts like the balloon payment to Michael Jordan or balloon payments to Kobe Bryant, to Klay Thompson. You can only do that to one person, and eventually they'll do that for Steph. But you can't do that for all three of the guys, right? Like it just doesn't work.
You do it for a bad team. Those years are
exactly.
Those years are coming for Steph when it's not the next 2 years. It's probably it's the next 2-3 years after that.
Yeah. He'll be raking in like 75 million a year.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen to Draymond either. Like our thank you for Draymond is trading him to Detroit for the last 2 years of his career.
Yeah,
that's what
the Warriors. They also lost a couple other people, Jerry West and Attles. Any thoughts on those guys and their passing?
I mean, these are legends. It's just funny how many phases the Warriors have. The Attles years, the Run TMC years, and then this new version of the Warriors. Like there's we're 2-3 generations away from the first run that the Warriors had with their championships. And it's just so funny how, if you think about sort of the legacy of the Warriors and you add in the context of Philadelphia, this is a very legendary franchise that just was so bad for so long and so good for most recently. That it's just really great that we have this legacy and all these banners hanging up. And it's not just about Steph. There's been generations of players.
I didn't see Al Attles play, but I always heard about him growing up. And so, he was such a legend. And it's just crazy like that he's gone, because he always like represented everything like from the Warriors before my time up until now. And like, that's the Golden State Warriors history to me, because he was always around. Al Attles was always like somebody that people revered, and I never saw him play. I never saw him coach. Saw him his outfits when he coached. He was a well-dressed man for the 70s. So it's a bummer that he won't be around anymore. Jerry West, I will say, like, I mean, I was so happy when he joined the Warriors because I always looked at him as somebody that whatever he touches turns to gold, whether it be the Lakers. I mean, he helped the Grizzlies, and then coming to um, uh, the Warriors, like he just knew what he was doing. Obviously, there's the non-trade of Klay Thompson to Minnesota, but just him infusing the Warriors with that kind of winning vibe. Because you remember back in the 90s when every Warriors coach was bottom of the barrel, getting fired and trying to find a replacement. No good front office or front office guys or coaches would even entertain coming to the Warriors. They'd mess with the Warriors. Like Phil Jackson would talk to the Warriors, as leverage. But it wasn't until Jerry West joined the front office that I was like, oh, okay, we got like a guy, like an actual legit winner. And, I will always say he's probably the greatest Laker of all time because of his playing career and then what he was able to build, uh, as a coach, as a GM, moving on forward. So,
you could
rest
argue
in peace to
that
those dudes.
you can argue that he was seminal for the new ownership group for Lakeup and company, because
Absolutely.
all the new owners, I mean, just look at all the recent owners who have made a trade right away. Like the Suns, for example, anybody who's sort of coming in and buying a team and they've made billions of dollars in their own sort of company, they just expect to have the same results when they buy a basketball team. Lakeup had an advisor who was just like, you might not want to trade Klay. And I don't know if he was on early enough to sort of be involved in the David Lee trade that Lakeup okayed when he came in. I think that was the trade when he came in. Was it David? Yeah, it was the David Lee trade that he okayed before he actually bought the team. But like there were no sort of big home run trades that happened. I mean, you can argue that the Bogut trade was kind of a home run page, but like in the sort of, if you were to think about the Bradley Beal impact for the Suns, it was not that big of a deal. So just having slow and progressive trades and transactions early on in the Lakeup ownership was probably, I would assume, because of Jerry West.
Yeah. I mean, he gave the franchise instant credibility, instant clout, and one of the 4 or 5 guys who changed his franchise, right? At the very top,
And if you draft Kobe, then you're going to basically be in favor on the good side of all the players that want to come.
Yeah, but he should thank the Warriors for drafting Todd Fuller that year. Wait. Yeah. Are
we going to do a redraft?
Can't go back.
Okay, for the rest of
not right now. Not. We're just going back through the summer. All right. So I admittedly tuned out of the NBA and basketball for a while. A lot of this calendar year, didn't put the pod out that often. Kind of got busy with work stuff, and then just wasn't as enthused. But I got to say, like I did tune into the Olympics. I didn't watch every game, but yeah, I mean, everybody was like, Steph was having these bad games, and it was like, no, man, is this how he's going to go out? Like everybody is looking at him and saying like, oh, see, this is like a function of the system. And even though his coach who coaches the system is the head coach of Team USA, but that it was just going to be like this overrated talk. What impressed you the most about the Olympics for in general?
I'm just really glad that the entire United States finally got a glimpse of what it's like to be a Warriors fan. Like they literally got the entire works. They got Steve Kerr making some interesting decisions on play. Like that was the biggest talk, right? Like who was starting, who was playing, all the rotations. They had Steph on a bunch of slow nights, and then just transcendent Steph to get the gold. Like the ups and the downs. Like people from the outside think that the Warriors have always been up, during all the runs because they ignore all the downs. But as all of us have been very lucky to have Steve Kerr and Steph Curry for the past 15, 12 years, whatever, for them to sort of get a microcosm of it and have like all of the country essentially be quote unquote Warrior fans for a few weeks was very bizarre and very fun. I've did not expect this of Steph. I really didn't. Like, I don't think any Warrior fans would have expected this to basically, if you were to tell me that before the Olympics started, you'd say the most important 3-point shot that Steph has ever shot will be coming next, I would have thought you were crazy. But this is essentially how the Olympics work, which is you pick a bunch of guys and at some point somebody gets hot and they just defer to them, right? This happened with Kobe, this happened with LeBron, and it's just really interesting. And I mean, now technically the only thing that Steph really needs to prove is Olympics MVP, which I didn't even know was a thing until it happened. And LeBron got it, I guess. Didn't really know that, but sure, why not?
I actually didn't know there was an Olympics MVP until you said so just now, and I think that they're trying to find awards for everything.
Isn't there? I mean, let me double check.
You're probably right. I will say about that, it's like not only like the rest of the US, but like the basketball watching world. I don't know what it's like everywhere else. I know that Steph has got fans, throughout Asia, around the globe, whatnot. But I'm sure he also has a bunch of folks who, uh, you know, people don't watch him live, people don't see it like in the moment or whatever. So it's cool that they witnessed this before it was over because it's his first and only Olympics, unfortunately. But uh, I dig that, and yeah, I mean that's what's kind of fun about the Olympics, right? Like I was never I like the London Redeem Team. That's the only time I ever pulled for Kobe Bryant. You know what I mean? in my life, and and just watching all these guys play. I mean, I was even pulling for Tatum when he was on the court, and I don't dislike Tatum as a person. I just think he's overrated. I know that narrative has caught on over the last couple years, and it's not like he's not good. I just think that Tatum, because he plays in Boston for that franchise, he's a little bit overhyped, But
He had his
besides the
chance.
point, yeah,
He had his chance
but
to play.
but it had me being like, all right, Tatum, but I think one thing that really, really stood out to me was like when I would see Steph and KD and LeBron together, just in photos, in freeze frames or whatever. Those are the defining players of this generation, and that was fun to see. Even though they're all older, they're still at they're still in their like late. I mean, LeBron is amazing at his age. KD still has his skill set, and Steph can still put it up. But it's fascinating to me because each of those dudes, like, think about the NBA before them, and you couldn't imagine certain types of players. And then we got this 7-footer who weighs like 55 pounds, who has crazy skill, and KD and like these are all like aberrations that you would only imagine in a video game. A guy like Steph who can shoot it from anywhere at the flick of a wrist with just the smallest window, and then LeBron who's just a physical specimen of speed, size, skill, strength, and it was fascinating to see just because of that. It's not just like, oh, it's a James Harden who can manipulate the rule book. But it's like these three guys who epitomize like so much of how the game has changed. And you see so many big guys who are like uh KD now. You see so many other dudes who chuck the ball like Steph. And even though not many people can emulate LeBron, you just see how that all around game has affected a lot of people. So I don't know. It's just something I noticed because those three guys are really, really just unique aberrations. It's not just like quote unquote they're good. It's like they are so unique in the history of the NBA.
And they were 2 of 3 were on the same team for 3 years. And I just looked it up. 2020, Kevin Durant was the Olympics MVP. My brain can't comprehend how that was possible considering the injury, but just the whole narrative around how Kevin Durant and Steph Curry played together also was really interesting. And it doesn't sound like they had a great relationship. Like, I don't know how much of a relationship they have now. I think the reporting was trying to come up with like how nostalgic they both were at that time, but it just based on body language, I'm sure they weren't really into it. I don't know. It just seemed very odd to me. But I do want to mention, since this is a Homer Warriors pod, just seeing Podz and Trace like on the practice squads, the USA practice squads with Cooper Flag.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, I feel like I watched more of that footage and read more about that than the actual Olympics until Steph, started igniting. But up until then, I was like, "Ooh, look at this."
I that did catch my attention as well. So yeah, good to bring that up. What else from the summer? Not looking forward just yet, but was there anything else that caught your attention that you want to touch upon? Just rehashing the summer that was.
Yeah, I think the only thing I want to mention that's sort of Warriors related is just like the announcement of the Golden State Valkyries, which was nice to have. I feel like we need a WNBA team in the Bay Area. I kind of wish they weren't in San Francisco, but that's just what we get because Lake Up, bought into the WNBA, and so he got to play there. I just feel like they should spread it out and play maybe in the South Bay, maybe be in Oakland, but they own the arena, so it makes sense. I do think it's hilarious that we missed the greatest WNBA history, the best WNBA draft class in NBA history by 1 year. I think Cameron Brink would have been perfect as the first Valkyrie, as somebody who grew up with Steph Curry and played at Stanford. That would have been just great. And so I wonder how Lake Up is going to go after a player like that. I would imagine that he would want a player like that for here.
Yeah, anybody like with a big name. I don't know what the contracts are like in the WNBA, but I can't wait for that team to get started. Like, admittedly, I wasn't super excited just because I was tuned out, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." Heard it was coming for a while, a WNBA team to the Bay, and I agree with you. I kind of wish it was in the East Bay or South Bay, but makes total sense. But yeah, I'm curious to see like how this team catches on, how it catches fire, who they can bring on to be like a marquee name, and how Warriors fans get used to the Valkyries and start complaining about them too. Us included, of course, but we'll see how that goes. The Oakland Valkyries podcast. How's that sound? No.
Yeah, and then I mean the other stuff is all the trade attempts, right? And so it sounds like you didn't want Paul George. I didn't want Paul George either. 34 years.
Man. Yeah. No, I didn't want him for like the price tag and for the injury history and for the playoff P stuff. I mean, I get it, but like I just don't think it would have been a wise move if they would have had to sell the house, like if you had to include all the young dudes and whatnot. And if we just kind of talk about like, I mean, and then, what are your thoughts on Paul George before I move on, actually?
I don't think we would have traded that much. Like, it's just really interesting that the Clippers were just like, we'd rather have nothing and start over than whatever the Warriors put forth. But I mean, if you think about what happened with Kawhi and him coming to the Clippers and them not getting, was it past the second round or something? I'm not worried about the regular season. I'm worried about the playoffs. The play-in, actually, the last few years is just getting in and winning the play-in. So as a team, one of the reasons why we haven't really paid attention as much in the summer this year is we're in the middle. Like, this is what it's like to be a team in the middle. This is what it's like to be the Indiana Pacers every year, which is you're not bad enough so that we spend hours and hours and hours talking about the draft. Like I would have loved to talk about Cooper Flag for 3 hours right now, right? And watching Cooper Flag highlight reels, or just talk about being like, are we going to be second, third, or fourth, in the West this year? But this is what it's like to be in the middle. And I don't think Paul George is going to get us out in the middle, and I think it's going to ruin the team moving forward during the post-Steph years.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Like, I don't even want to beat a dead horse, but just being attached to Paul George for that long on that money would have felt like a 1990s Warriors move. It would have felt like these poorly judged all or nothing type things, and he wouldn't have guaranteed anything. And then the Lauri Markkanen type thing. I mean, after a while, it became pretty clear that, when you're dealing with Danny Ainge, he was just going to be like, pulling and asking and pulling your chain and whatever. He has full control over what he's doing in Utah. Like, there seems to be no bad blood with Lauri Markkanen and him being dangled out there or whatever. So he had that figured out. Like, there was no pressure on him at all. I know there was like, whether when they sign him and if he'd be eligible for the trade deadline, which he's no longer. But I would have loved Markkanen on the team. I just don't know if I just didn't think he was worth everything and everybody. And honestly, right now, I don't remember exactly what was on the table, but like everything was, that's one thing that I enjoyed tuning out of too, was like these random made up rumors from nowhere and people that were just on some random blog just making up stuff, say, oh, I heard this, and it's not true. But I wouldn't have done that. I just given up the whole house for it. And I don't know. I would have loved him on the team for a limit, because there was a time when like these quote unquote rumors were like, oh, it'll just be like a bunch of picks, a bunch of swaps, Podz and Moody or something. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Or like just Moody, right? But that wasn't real, right?
Danny Ainge, I forgot what the exact thing was, but it was like everybody and everything we ever had. And Podz was the last straw. And apparently Warrior fans think Podz is going to be the next Jordan. So we were all like, okay, the line has been drawn. We can't do that. In either scenario, I really hope that Markkanen just totally kills it in Utah this year and is like an MVP caliber player, so that Cooper Flag doesn't end up as a Jazz. Yeah. Because I know that at some point, Danny Ainge is going to blow up the ship to get Cooper Flag.
There was some chatter. I don't even know if it was real chatter. You mentioned Jimmy Butler during the break. Why don't you talk about that for a second?
That just seems like the first name that's been coming up now, late in the summer, early start of season. This is the last year for Butler. And I don't think Miami, like people are saying Miami's not going to re-sign him. So likely going to trade him. This sounds like a move that they would make, like trade a guy on the last year contract because they don't want to pay him to get some prospects. Maybe there's no love lost. Like he didn't win championships in Miami, so it's not like a LeBron or a Dwayne Wade situation. So the question is whether or not the Warriors want to make that kind of push. And I don't think Pat Riley is going to accept anything but the most for Jimmy Butler. But the question is whether or not you'd want a Jimmy Butler here. Age and injuries withstanding.
Yeah, the ideal version of Jimmy Butler, sure. But again, like if it costs a lot, now you're going from dealing with Danny Ainge to Pat Riley, then good luck. I just don't necessarily think that it's the most exciting move to me. Depends on where the Warriors are, how their young guys look by mid-season. And to be honest, from what I know, like this isn't actually a rumor. It was just Sam Amick on Kawakami's podcast saying, rehashing some of the people that the Warriors were interested in over the summer, and Jimmy Butler was one of them. Yeah, and yes, he could become available, most likely come February 6th. the trade deadline, but it's not anything where it's like imminent or gets me all juiced up. I'm more focused on just seeing how this team comes out, how they can try to put things back together, and how some of the young guys start looking uh, in training camp and in the preseason. So, you know,
I for
um,
this
yeah.
for this roster coming up. So now we're transitioning to the year. I've read in multiple places that people think that this is the best roster that the Warriors have had since KD, like even better than the championship year. Would you agree with that?
Best roster the
At the
Warriors have had
at the
since
start of the
KD.
season.
Uh,
So you're basically comparing this roster to the championship, the 2021-2022 championship season.
Here's the thing to me, right? It's like how solid some of these uh, veterans like Buddy Hield, Melton, what's his name, Anderson, um, how good they are, how much they can help and blend in with the team, and then how much the younger guys step up. You know, I mean, like that's really it. Uh, I have high expectations for the younger dudes, especially Kaminga, but if they are relegated to the same opportunities they had last season, then it's not. You know what I mean? So it's relative.
I think
It's
that's
tough.
I think that's the argument, because if we were to play that game that we played before where you're comparing like how deep is the team, if you were to
Hmm.
compare this team to the championship team, we still have a Kaminga. Obviously, he was a rookie back then. We still have a Gary Payton. Um, Otto Porter Jr. is, you can compare him to one of the three pickups now in terms of like where the quality is at the start of the season.
Hmm.
Theoretically, still have Andrew Wiggins, and of course, still have Steph Curry and Draymond Green. Um, so if you look at the championship season, um, like all of the remaining players are kind of like Damian Lee, JT. Um, I mean, even Moody was on there. We still have Looney, so he's dropped off a bit. But like, I could totally see the argument. Like, if you compare the day one roster from 2021 to this season, you can argue the Warriors have a better lineup, a better
Yeah, but
roster.
what version of these guys are you going to get? I think that's just a cop out. But like Looney, he could have a bounce back year, but he's definitely not the guy that he was that in that championship season. He wasn't that guy last season. You know, um, it could be. It could be. I mean, it just depends. It really depends on how it all comes together. Like, there's an Oakland Warriors Discord, and I asked like what people wanted to talk about. And I wanted to ask you, like, is this the end? Are the Warriors done?
The Warriors started being done in 2019, so this is like a very long death, but you could still have little pops of greatness, right? Steph Curry said that he'd be fine with the last few years of his career as long as there's a chance. And there's a reason for that. Because if you give Steph Curry a chance, you're gonna, beat Team France, right? And so if you look at this roster versus 2021, you just got to give Steph Curry a chance. And I think the difference between building a roster for Steph Curry to give him a chance versus the home run trade that gives him a better chance, there's way too much we have to give up for something like that. That it makes more sense just to give Steph Curry a fighting chance while also trying to make sure the Warriors are good moving past that time. And I know that's a long way of saying like the two timeline thing, but you don't have to say it's two timelines if you just say like we don't want to trade Podz and we probably don't want to trade Trace. Like and we'll see what happens with Jonathan Kaminga. Um, and it might involve like not doing contract extensions for Moses Moody and Jonathan Kaminga right now, because you might lock somebody in for a long time that you might not want in your team. So it's just really smart. It's just really smart. I mean, like I really, is it crazy to say that I kind of really like what's going on right now with the GM role?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dunleavy's done a great job since last summer, and he's impressed me. I think he's savvy. I think he's tried to make trades, but he uses better judgment not to do certain things, and I support that overall. I think it's easy just to pile on and just be like, oh, get this person, get that person for Steph. But that's not how the NBA works. And I think that the Warriors, have a chance. I mean, let's. I'm sure I'll probably rehash the past couple years again at some point. I've tried to stay away from it, but it's like they won a title. They brought back the same team. They went a little too young um, by drafting Baldwin and Rollins instead of getting like maybe a veteran or two. I think they should have just rolled with 3 lottery picks and then moved on from there and surround them with all vets at this point. But it was a punch from Draymond to Poole that killed that. And then last season they missed the 6th spot by 4 games, and Draymond missed like 20-ish games, 20 plus games. They didn't lose all those games, but maybe they with some better mojo and him in the lineup, they win 5 more games somehow last season.
That's the biggest thing from last year is if you just look at the number of games that did not have Draymond Green, and you look at the plus minus of him being out, it's just night and day. Like
that's the thing. People like me express frustration about Draymond. It's all coming back to me. I've buried it, and so I'm starting to remember the stuff I thought last season. But I criticize Draymond. People talk about how important he is, and that's the whole point, because he's so important. And when he's on the court, he's good and he helps. And when he's not, because of his own immaturity or poor judgment, whatever you want to call it, then he's the Warriors bad. And so you're sitting there complaining about getting this guy, trading for Chris Paul, it didn't work out, or getting rid of Jordan Poole, which I still think is a great move. Not trading youngsters for so-and-so, not getting some retread veteran because they had a big name in the past. But they were there. They were right there. They should have been in contention the previous 2 seasons. And this season, it's going to be tougher just because of the momentum they have in terms of getting older. Draymond having honestly his 2 worst seasons just in terms of his career. Just forget the 2016 thing. That's probably 3rd worst in my opinion. But this is there's also the KD yelling thing. But the last 2 seasons were the worst because they were these prolonged periods of he had this negative effect. So can he keep it together? Will Steve Kerr give Kuminga that leash? Will he play Moody? And will Podz improve? Trace Jackson Davis, will he improve? Will the 2 2021 lottery picks, Kuminga and Moody, will they get stuck behind Melton? Will they get stuck behind Buddy Hield? Will they get stuck behind Kyle Anderson? If they get stuck behind, those are 3 classic guys that Kerr will opt for instead of risky young guys, right? So I was excited getting them to kind of fill out the roster with veterans, with solid role players, guys who can play a little bit of this, that on the court, like defense or passing or shooting. But then I'm like, oh, those are the exact types of guys that Steve Kerr would swap in front of Kuminga and Moody. So we'll see how that all plays out. But improvement from them, I think, is going to be critical. And I get frustration that Steph, he showed out in the Olympics and blah blah blah. Steph ran out of gas last season because he had to carry this team because of what Draymond did. You know what I mean? And Steph always has Draymond's back, which you love to see, but it's also he's enabling and not really teaching him a lesson, and kind of taking this team down with him. But
yeah, I mean, him doing the 1-year extension to line up with Draymond, his contract is basically the ultimate the ultimate move to sort of align himself with Draymond, which I'm sure we can all debate. I will say it's sort of about Moody though. I feel like his value at this point might be worth more if you don't play him. He's sort of like the draft prospect that if you play him more, then you might go down in draft. So I wonder if Kerr is actually going to play him, knowing that he might be more valuable, because it doesn't look like he's going to, if things continue the way they are, he's not going to play. So I really hope we do trade him, because I think he is tradable. But I will say, about this roster, between Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield, like there is an opportunity for us to play beautiful basketball in a system that I think we're all very used to watching. And so I'm excited. Like the upside for this is like it might be good that this is a boring team that people aren't really looking at right now, because it's just a team that has added some veterans that can play along Steph. And so, I'm pretty optimistic about this. It would have been fun for the general audience to watch like a Paul George, but I would rather have those 3 additions than a Paul George.
Yeah, and especially considering that you also have all the young guys you would have had to give up for Paul George.
Exactly. Yeah.
There as well. What are your expectations for Podziemski? You said something earlier which made me think you don't think he's actually that good.
No, I think he's great. As somebody who went to school across the street from Santa Clara around the same time that Steve Nash was playing there, I would say, for someone who didn't play basketball until like 8th grade, this is like as good as we are protecting him as much as any rookie we've ever had on the team. Like I can't believe the attention he gets from Warrior fans, the minutes that he gets from Steve Kerr, and the confidence that he has. Like that one game where he was just like telling Klay to get it together. Like I feel like that was the straw for Klay, like not putting up with Podz. I think it's great. And playing on Team USA, like didn't he play in the summer league too? Didn't he come back and play in the summer? Like
he did.
He's done like amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Like he just loves to play basketball, which is more than a certain center that we read a lot of articles about how he wanted to be a DJ. So wherever Wiseman is now, he's gettable, by the way. We can get him back if you want him.
I wanted him back. The thing about Podz, like, what do you think Pod's comp is? Who do you think it is?
Man. Right now? Gosh.
Yeah, or like is his ceiling comp, I suppose. It's not an easy one.
I mean, it's easy. I mean, it's easy just to say Steve Nash because they're both white point guards that played for Santa Clara.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at him having the most charges like in the history of the NBA last year, like out of the year, like which point guards do that kind of stuff? You know what I mean? Like that should be an indicator of how willing he is to play defense. I think it's great. Like we really just need him to just step it up on the 3-point side, right?
Yeah. I mean, his 3-point shot isn't bad. I mean, I'm sure he had stretches where he wasn't great. Like the thing that I don't have a great comp for Podz right now, because my mind is not. I haven't thought about NBA players in a while. But like the thing that I go to, I know. I mean, what do you hear? Because like I hear a lot of Warriors fans who like him, and then I hear a lot of Warriors fans who just think he's so overrated and they like hate him and all this other stuff. Maybe hate's too strong, but they're just like, get rid of him, trade him for whoever you can get.
I think they're saying that because his name is in all of these rumors because apparently other GMs want him. And so you should consider that. Like however many calls you get about a certain player is probably a good indicator of what others from the outside are thinking of your team on the inside. And I don't think we're in a case where we are overvaluing him. In some ways, we might be overvaluing Kuminga and Moses Moody more so than the rest of the league, but I don't think that's the case with Podz.
We being like fans or the team?
Fans, yeah. I feel like we have been like, don't trade Moses Moody and don't trade JK, is probably in a way that might be skewed as a homer. But I think Podz is a real deal. He's just fun to watch too.
Yeah, he's got some flair. What I always think about with Pods is, um, what he played 2 collegiate years. What, he had 1 year in Indiana where he was
One
not good. Was it Indiana?
Illinois?
Um,
I think it was
Illinois,
Illinois. I forgot which.
Illinois,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then one
somewhere.
season with Santa Clara. Yeah,
And once, so like, and again, different generations, different players, whatever. But like, to come to this team, I mean, I think about Draymond when he was a rookie, Klay when he was a rookie, and I think about Pods. And again, not comparing just strictly like, oh, he's better than them when he was a rookie, but like, if just how far along Pods is already as a player in terms of skill, in terms of confidence, in terms of knowing the game. So if you look at Clay, his rookie year, like, was that the year they traded Monte or something? And then he hit some shots, whatever, but he wasn't like this all timer, whatever. This guy you can't necessarily trade if there wasn't a good offer. But like, Pods compares, right? Pods is better than Clay was in terms of how far along he is right now compared to that. And so it's like, okay, let's see if he can build on that his second year, and then if he makes it to his third year with the Warriors, how much further he can get along. Because those guys, the core of this Warriors dynasty, again, not saying that the environments or the circumstances are the same, but they were able to move along and become what they became, right? So with Pods, it's like, okay, let's see. He's I think we kind of overlook how good he was his rookie year. And I'm not saying like, oh, he should have been rookie of the year or something like that, but like, this kid come out of nowhere, who I personally thought was going to be in the G League all season, and to earn Steph's trust, Kerr's trust, the a
first team
starting
all
gig
rookie.
for a while. Yeah, all that stuff. And it's like, yo, if Draymond did that his rookie year, if Clay did that his rookie year, um, and I'm not saying those guys were schlubs back then, but like, we didn't expect what they became. And so, I'm just saying,
This
let's see
this
what
would
his
be
trajectory is year 2.
it would be a different conversation if he was drafted 7th or 8th. It would just be a
Yeah.
different conversation. I feel like there'll be more people on his bandwagon if he, like, draft picks linger on, like the number that you were picked just linger on. And so for him to sort of coming out of a place like Santa Clara and being a surprise, I think people are still sort of not trusting it. But if you were to compare Clay first year, I was so frustrated watching Clay the first few years because I just wish he would just like shoot a basket from like less than 5-6 feet away. Like, if you recall how frustrating it was for Clay to just not drive, and just, it was just really frustrating. And if you were to compare just the amount of times I've been frustrated between watching Clay his first few years and Podz his first year, like, I don't recall the game where I was just like, oh, it's frustrating to see him play, because I feel like he
Mhm.
does the right thing every time. Which, if you're playing alongside Steph Curry, like, that's all you can ask for. Either get away or
Mhm.
just be part of the system.
Who do you think is the starting 2 guard opening night?
It might not be Pods, but I think it will eventually be Pods.
Yeah. What's your opening night lineup?
God, I mean, the obvious is what? Steph, Pods, Draymond, um, Wiggins, and I guess Trace over Looney the first
Mm.
game. That's my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. This roster, it's like it has all these parts, but it's like, oh, they don't all perfectly fit just yet. And I mean, you've heard the idea of like Steph, Wiggins, Kaminga, Draymond, and Trace? I mean, there's some
Who
big
shoots?
shooting woes on that one. It's a hell of a defensive team, uh, but the shooting is kind of iffy, to say the least. I mean, Wiggins, streakiest guy ever. Kuminga can hit it, but he's just not respected. He's not consistent enough fully. So I don't know if that's going to happen.
Can we just
what
play
do you
South
think?
Sudan for the first few weeks, just like the Olympics, and just figure it out as we go? The lineup, is that possible? Even though South Sudan, it was pretty damn good, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of who starts at two at the beginning of the season, I think it's gonna be we'll see if training camp is honestly, like, again, that's a cop out. But if Pod struggles, if he gets outplayed, outshot by Buddy Hield, if Melton, if Pod's defense isn't as sturdy as Melton's in some respect, then I can see one of the vets filling in that role. But yeah, I don't know. I just hope for the day where Kuminga can play the three. To be honest, that's what I wait for.
If history holds true, Buddy Hield will just come in as a shooter on a hot streak, and Melton will be injured. As many of my friends from Philadelphia has told me. And then you're gonna forget Kyle Anderson is playing, and then realize that he's got like 10 points and whatever rebounds and assists. But if that's just history holding true.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah,
I do want to mention Guy Santos. I really think that this is going to be, maybe this is the most Homer thing I'll say, but like, watch out for this. Might be the Guy Santos year. Just watch out. For and I'm saying that while I'm wearing a Santa Cruz Warriors hat at the moment, but it's true.
For all you Warriors fans listening who are a little anxious about the season, stressed, upset that the Warriors didn't quote unquote get like a second star, you heard it here first. It might be the Guy Santos season.
Yeah. I think we pronounced that right. It's not Gui, right? It should be Guy Santos.
Yeah, it's Guy. It's Guy. I think. Well, now I don't even know. But why? What are you seeing from this kid?
I mean, you've seen him play. It just feels
fun.
It's fun. Like if he just gets better and better every year. Yeah. It's just really fun. I mean, like to see him from his first year in Santa Cruz to now, it just seems like a major leap.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple of those games towards the end of the season where he got some playing time, and he had a couple dunks and hit some threes, and it was like, oh, okay. Do you think the Warriors need anything on their roster right now? Like, I mean, people talk about size.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be size. It's got to be size and athleticism. But like, there's two big men in Cleveland, and that might be one too many, but I feel like there's teams out there that have two big men that they might be willing to trade. So we'll see if any of that ever happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
what happened to the days of us being able to pick up somebody off the trash heap and then they becoming like a transcendent player. Even the Looney footage that's coming out, he's going back to the Milwaukee point guard Looney, like him like losing all the weight and like being very mobile.
Oh, really? He's back to KD Looney?
Go back to those. Yeah, watch the Grady footage of like shirtless Looney playing point guard and just rethink the phrase about us playing small again, because Looney is like smaller than he was before now.
Yeah. Have you looked at the schedule at all?
Just to see like when Klay was coming back, and to be honest, I was just looking at bobblehead nights because it's just. There's today they dropped the Steph Curry Olympic gold bobblehead night for the preseason. It's him with in a USA basketball jersey standing on top of the Eiffel Tower. 10,000 giveaways, and 1,500 of them will be solid gold Steph Curry bobbleheads, which I'm sure will sell for like $1,000 on eBay. So I'm very excited for that.
If not more. Cool, man. Cool. Well, any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I feel like the Guy Santos take should have been the last one. So maybe we should edit it to make it the last statement before the outro music ends. You could play some Brazilian samba music on the way out. How about that?
Do you have an intern to help me find some? Maybe it'll begin and end with McGee Santos take. Cool, man. Well, thank you for coming on. Bang. Appreciate it.